You're listening to Straight Shooters, a straightforward golf podcast that'll straighten out your game. And here are your hosts, Keith Bennett and Henry Stetina.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Straight Shooters podcast. We've got a really special guest with us today, someone I've really been looking forward to. You know, when we started this podcast, it was one of the names that I had circled for somebody that I wanted to speak to in the world of golf instruction, and that is Mr. Baden Schaff. Mr. Baden, how are we doing? Thanks for joining us.
Keith, thanks so much for having me, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and Henry, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely, Baden. Thanks for being on the show, buddy.
It's awesome. It's so cool that, I'm here on the other side of the earth and we can have this great conversation.
Over in Australia. Yeah, it's kind of like the what we're going to talk to you about, coaching people all over the world. But so for our listeners who don't know, Baden, why don't you give us a little 2-minute background on kind of how you got into golf instruction, the genesis of the Skillest App, right? For all of you who don't know, Baden is the founder of the Skillest App, which is a global golf instruction online application. So yeah, give us a little rundown.
Yeah, so I'm a career coach. I've been teaching. People think I look younger than I actually am. I'm sort of 40 years old now, and I've been teaching for almost 20 years. But it's look, I've just always been obsessed with technique in everything. I know you're a snowboarder, Keith, and I always find that guys that probably have a background like you and I, or even Jake Hutt might be one of them as well. Like Jake was a hockey player before he was a golfer, and I was a cricketer before I was a golfer, really. But I'd always loved sports like swimming and skiing and these highly technical sports, and always understanding best practices. Like I just was obsessed with probably denying how shit I was at those sports and trying to find, best practices and people who were great at it and understanding how they did things and then trying to implement a lot of what they did. So I sort of, I played cricket. Loved cricket. I really wanted to, play cricket for Australia, but that didn't really work out. And I sort of got into golf a little bit later. Like I didn't really start playing golf until I was about 18, 19 properly. And it wasn't until I went and had my first golf lesson when I was about 19 that I realized, I turned to the guy after he gave me the lesson and said, okay, how do I do this for the rest of my life? Not how do I play for the rest of my life? What you are doing is the coolest thing in the world, because I just saw him transform my ball flight in like an hour sort of thing. And pretty much from that day, I just have pursued it, like tried to get as good as I can at understanding, cause and effect and how to fix, golf swings. But I then, shortly after that, I started a marketing degree, and I was just, I was about sort of 20 and really not enjoying it. And my parents sort of said to me, like, you're pretty much sort of wasting your life here. What do you really want to do? And I sort of said, look, I want to pursue this golf thing. And I, at this stage, wasn't much of a golfer, to be perfectly honest. I was still playing off 6 or something like that. And I then went and moved to Queensland, which is in the north of Australia. So I'm from Melbourne originally, and I am now living in Melbourne. But I moved to Queensland, and I worked with a guy up there who is still my mentor and still like the person that I look to for guidance. His name is Gary Edwin, and Gaz is just like a freak, right? And he's like, the way he sort of sees golf swings and he can articulate things and tell people how it's going to feel for them. It was really like watching an artist work. And it was through working with him, not only because of how differently he taught from everyone else, because he does, like technically teaches so differently to everyone else, but he was doing online lessons like 10 a day back in 2001, like literally 2 decades ago sort of thing. So it was amazing to watch this happen. And I basically shadowed this guy for like 5 years. And during that period, I just saw, because this guy was teaching like US tour winners, like from Australia, like he was teaching Rob Pamplin, Peter Lonard, Michael Campbell, who won the US Open, a bunch of other players. He had this little stable of Australians that were doing so well overseas. So I just saw how well he was doing, how powerful the online learning thing was. And then I was like, okay, I better go and, travel the world and do, explore myself. I then went to London. I was teaching in London, and I did all this without my PGA actual qualifications at this stage. I told them I was a PGA professional, but it was like, I'll tell a quick story. I literally flew over there because one of my mates was in this academy, and he said, there's a guy that's about to quit. I reckon if you fly over here, you'll get a job, right? I'm like, yeah. I haven't got my PGA qualifications. I knew how to teach, but I had no qualifications whatsoever. And he's like, yeah, come over. So I literally sold my car. I flew over there. At that stage, I got like 33 pence to the Australian dollar. So I went over with like $5,000 and it turned it into like 1,800 pounds or something like that. So I'd moved my life over there in the hope that I could lie my way into this job effectively. So,
wow. Talk about betting on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually did that. And I got into the job. And before any time soon, I was teaching more than anyone else. So they never asked again. They didn't even ask for my qualifications. But anyway, so teaching in London. And then from there, I got a great job offer in Singapore. Went and taught in Singapore for a bit over a year. But I sort of got to the point where I was like, okay, I've got to go back to Australia and actually do my time, like do my PTA. Because I'd sort of been, at this stage, I was probably teaching a hell of a lot and just having a lot of fun, to be perfectly honest. And I was like, okay, time to get serious. I sort of got to about 27 at this stage, went back to Australia and did my traineeship, and pretty much was lucky to get into the best teaching jobs, some of the best teaching jobs in Australia. And yeah, I've just been the entire time just been obsessed with fixing golf swings and helping people with their game. But, over that period, boys, which, the pain of being a golf instructor, there's so many of them that, there's almost too many to list. It's like, okay, how do I build a consistent book? How do I teach, more people than live literally within, 5-mile radius of where I live? How do I actually get them to integrate things and get better at the game? Because that was the thing that I found so frustrating. Is someone would come for a lesson, you'd fix them up, give them the best information possible, and then they disappear and come back. And it's like, okay, so what have you been doing for the last 4 weeks, sort of thing? And I just started becoming really hyper aware of all these problems. And then I actually was teaching a guy one day who has turned out to be my co-founder at Skillest. And he's a Chinese guy, Alan Gao, who's just an absolute superstar. And Alan had been living in Australia for 10 years, but obsessed with the golf swing, obsessed with trying to get better. And he was sort of turned to me, he's like, how come I only can learn from you? Like, why can't I learn from Butch Harmon or whoever it is? Sort of. And so we were sort of like coming at the same problem from opposite ends. I really wanted to solve the problem of, I would love my message to be so much wider than just my limited geographic area. And also, deep down, I wanted to create something global, and I wanted to create something that just had a really, really profound effect on the way the game was learned and taught. And so we came together, and that was it was actually 6 years ago or something like that. And ever since then, we've built this platform, put our heart and souls into trying to connect people like you, Henry, and Keith, with students from around the world, because there's no doubt that your mentor is out there. As a student, I'm guaranteeing you your mentor is out there. You just haven't met them yet. And, we have then, that's what we tried to do, is connect students and coaches from around the world and give coaches really cool tools. It's all done via sort of video sharing and video analysis, but we've also got a Zoom integration. And, we think that we can honestly provide a better experience than the live experience, which is so transactional at times. It's very, very sort of clumpy and happens in giant chunks occasionally. Whereas if you can learn little bits often from the best coach in the world, I guarantee you your learning is going to be so much more accelerated. So that's probably a pretty long-winded sort of version of what's happened to me over the past 20 years.
Hey, Baden, that's a cool story. I love the background. I love hearing from people who are worldly, who have traveled, lived in different countries. I think you just have a unique perspective on things. And I want to get into the Skillest platform, online coaching, how that's maybe a better tool. I love how you use the word mentors and finding your mentor. I'm kind of curious about your mentor, Gary Edwin. Can you tell us a little bit about his teachings and what you learned from him? I understand he has some very good fundamentals and simplistic approaches to teaching.
Yeah. So the way he teaches, is just, and it's feels like I'm living in a parallel universe at the moment with a lot of stuff that's out there. But Gary is, everything is based around impact, right? And sort of using reverse engineering your golf swing effectively. So what he talks about is the shape, the hitting shape, right? Or the impact shape, which is it's got that bias to it, you know what I mean? Where your hips are forward and your top is ever so slightly angled back away from the target, which is it's a universal hitting and throwing position. So, Tom Brady, when Tom throws, Tom isn't level with his shoulders and, straight with his spine. Tom tilts his body away from the target, and his right arm's down and he throws like that. And it's the same in cricket. It's the same in baseball pitching. It's, you know, everything has that bias of the body where the top sits slightly behind the lower body, if you know what I mean. And then from there, you're able to set your arms in front of your body and use your arms as your power source, which is the opposite, obviously, of what's out there at the moment. Everyone's about massive turns, ground force, shifts, like lots of really, really big motion. And we are all about the tiny moves. We love like simplicity, repeatable goal swings that don't have a lot of matchups in them. So matchups being, okay, if I over rotate and tilt this way, then I'm probably going to over rotate and tilt on the way down. And, you know, so that was the thing that it sort of comes back to why Skillest exists, Henry, is that it's like, wow, if this guy teaches this way, and it's like so different to what everyone else, you know, teaches. And look, I teach the way I teach, and I don't do it like in a really blind manner of saying, well, this is how everyone, I teach that way to every person, but I absolutely know that, you know, what George Gangas does, for example, works for some people, and then, you know, the stack and tilt guys work for some people, or, you know, wherever anyone fits into those spectrums and stuff like that, that, you know, you can teach, people can hit it really well lots of different ways. But I just found that the way he taught, for me, like, I'm just one of these people that I just keep asking why. Like, why would you do that to a goal swing? And why? How does that fix that? And how does that make that better? And like when you speak to Gary, he never gets backed into a corner because he's got an answer. You can always explain it, like what it always comes back to. So that, I suppose, is, you know, that's him, and he's very he's incredible. He actually is, you know, he's got this website which, you know, is still super powerful, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of hours of content you can go and watch. But he's very understated, never promotes himself. You know, he's very quiet on social media. But yeah, amazing information that I am still getting good at myself every day. Like I literally was just saying before, Henry, I've just come out of a golf lesson, and just even then, I just had a moment with that student going, oh my God, that she understood it that way, and I got that working better that way. And, you know, I'm 20 years, 30 years away from getting as good as Gary is the way he teaches, or what he love that journey. And I know that every coach is on that journey in their own modeling, probably in their head.
But you know what I really like about the Skillest app, and what I like about you're talking about, is that you're approaching it from the perspective of, I want the students to get better. You know, You're always learning. You're having those aha light bulb moments in lessons still, you know, deep into your teaching career right now. And, you know, it became only apparent to me when I first found out about the Skillest app, about how real it is that you are totally limited to whoever's within a 2-hour radius from you, as far as instructors are concerned, right? And because we hadn't known about any other solution, that's just what we dealt with, right? You, like you said, you open up a Golf Digest and you see these big name instructors, the Ledbetters, the Harmons, you know, and whoever else is on that list going forward. You're like, man, I wonder what they're talking about. Yeah. Right? I wonder what the lessons are like. And you'd never find out, right? And now we have this crazy platform where a student can sign up and they can go, I really like the way X teacher says this message. I'm going to take a golf lesson from him, right? I mean, like, that is absolutely insane, and what a cool world we live in. But I think it works so well because you approached it from that side of, like, you just want people to get better at golf, right? I mean, does that sound about right?
Yeah, 100%. And I absolutely, definitely did. And I wanted them to have access to the best by eliminating the worst, right? And I know that this is going to sound harsh, right?
It can sound a little harsh, but yeah, lay it on us.
This is going to sound harsh, but there's a lot of people out there that don't give a shit about their students. They're happy to sit on their mat and have people walk through the range and just like, okay, what are we working on today? See you later. Oh yeah, do you want to book in for a lesson next week? There's no plan. There's no duty of care. You know, and I think that a lot of students out there, they think that the PGA, right, teaches us how to teach, right? And we know that that isn't the case, right? So don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not here to bag the PGA, because our Australian PGA is different to the US, to the UK, to everywhere. But they can't, in a sense, they can't teach you how to teach, right? Because there's no model out there of how to do it, sort of thing. But I think the assumption from the student point of view is, I'll just, if I drive 5 miles down the road to go and see that guy, he probably knows the same stuff as the guy that lives 20 miles from me or who lives in Seattle or wherever. And it's not the case. Like, coaches teach completely differently from each other. They've learned, they're all at a different stage of learning. And I just think that, my job as well is that, like, there are, once again, this might sound harsh again, there's probably a lot of famous coaches out there that have done really well because they've got really, really good students that have won on the US tour. And it's like, well, they've probably hidden behind a cloak of secrecy forever. It's like, well, what are they actually doing when they sit in that room with that person and they put their swing on Swing Catalyst, or they've got their swing on video, and they're like, okay, what's that guy actually saying to that guy to make him swing it that way? Is he actually saying anything? Is there anything really profound there, sort of thing? Maybe not, whereas what we're seeing, Keith, and you're the perfect example of this is like someone that can, I still remember our first conversation, like in the middle of 2018.
Oh, yeah.
You had like 3,500 Instagram followers, or not even, maybe. You know what I mean? But what we've got now is this amazing world where Skillest is sort of the conduit, in a sense. Like, we're the go, we facilitate everything to happen. But you have like this direct line to your audience that's out there, 85,000 of them or whatever it is. And you say what you believe, and they can hear what you say, and there's no hiding, there's no cloak and dagger, there's no, drop the smoke bomb and like, hey, people have got no idea what's happening. You have to have a really clear, concise, well thought out message. And if you don't have that, people will not come to you. Like, people are drawn to you because you can articulate that. And I think that what, we're trying to do is then obviously provide the platform for you to then connect with students around the world. But also, like, the great thing about our platform is that if you're no good, you don't do that great on our platform, if I'm going to be completely honest, because it makes, not only do you have to be able to tell the message in the first place, but Keith, you might be the first one to sort of say this, it's hard. Like, teaching on Skillest is a very different skill set to teaching in person, because when you've got someone in person, you can fill an hour talking about the football, or you can fill an hour maybe because this is the thing, is that I've been, someone who's probably done too much of this in the past, is when I don't know how to articulate something to someone that I want them to understand, right? So we're working on their body posture or a sequence thing or whatever it might be. Sometimes you can just get in there and push them into shape. And that's not actually very helpful, right? Because they need to understand why they need to be in that shape, and they need to know it for themselves. Like, just walking over and pushing someone into a position is like, oh yeah, I can sort of feel that, but I need to, like, what is this shape, or what is this position, and why do I need to be here? And what Skillest drags out of you as a coach is like the perfect articulation of all that, because you can't walk over to someone and go, just go here, just do that for that sort of sake. So once again, long-winded sort of answer to what you asked, but it's like, it is all about the student getting better. We've got to get them better. Like, I don't think we've got them better for a long time because of, a lot of different reasons, but, it is about the student getting better, but it is also about, in sort of another roundabout way, it is also even more about the student, because we're trying to make coaches even better and give you the best coaches.
Yeah. I know Henry has a question. Along those lines. We were talking about this earlier about the communication aspect of Skillest, like, in how you can't push people into those positions, right? Henry, what was that question you had?
Yeah, so I teach golf and golf instruction for a university here in town who offers the PGA program. And so part of the curriculum includes learning, and we have to talk about motor learning. And what's interesting that I've found, I used social media for a while, Facebook, for communication with golf professionals, and it forced me to learn to articulate my thoughts. And then now, using Instagram and the Skillest model, I'm starting to do it on video, and it's causing me to now also be able to articulate and demonstrate my thoughts more clearly. And what I'm finding is that there's a whole bunch of benefits for online lessons, but one of them is exactly with what you touched on, that we can't necessarily nudge a person into making the correct movement and performing better during the lesson. we're actually requiring that they learn on a cognitive level and then hopefully retain that information a much longer period of time. There's a big difference between performance and learning. And I think it's requiring that the coach communicate in an effective manner and the player receive the information in a different manner, in a cognitive learning environment, rather than just kind of a nudging and not really knowing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it's just something that has been underrated for a long time as well. I think that, as I said, it comes back to so many students like just assume that the coach knows everything and they'll just do everything the coach says, and there's never any sort of pushback against that at all. I think that like the number of lessons you'll stand next to and like the coach will just say anything and the student's like, right, and they'll just do what they're told, whereas they should always be saying why, because you know I'm going to muck this up, but I think Plato said you can never teach a man anything. They need to know it for themselves, right? So that you know, that is feels, it is, you know, intellectualizing everything. Like you could sort of intellectually understand something, but do you really know it? You know what I mean? Do you absolutely know it? And I think that just unfortunately in golf, you know, a lot of the time in golf coaching and golf lessons, we probably just force information onto people. We just assume that they're sort of, they've got it. We push them into place and then see you later on your way. And they probably walk away with like, okay, I can sort of somewhat see what you're saying there, somewhat feel what you're saying there, but I have really no idea of like how I'm either supposed to execute that, or I don't really know it for myself. And that's the thing is that I you know, often if you're a good coach, I think you can sort of you can explain something 1,000 different ways, because all you're trying to do is trying to get that student to understand something for themselves. Like you can, because as I said, someone can intellectually understand everything. They'd be like, I know what you mean, but I don't know it. I can't feel that sort of thing. So I think that's once again, like the app just provides like so much. It demands more of you as a coach, because you need to be able to explain things in many different ways to help people understand things for themselves. So yeah, it's been an incredible, it's definitely been an incredible ride. And the other thing that I would say, Henry, like in sort of talking about that, is that the thing that's really hard as a golf coach, right, I would say, is that, like, I think that probably, Keith, you probably have a similar format to me in a sense, right, where we work at academies, or we work at like a driving range with a golf course attached to it. You've got like 1 hour, or half an hour. If it's really bad, you've got like half an hour. People come in for a golf lesson and they stand there and like they're just expecting their problems to be solved like that, right? And so when someone stands there in front of you and they're hitting like shanks out to the right, or they're pull hooking it or whatever, you're like, okay, I've got 15 seconds to make a split-second decision on how the next half an hour is going to go, right? And because you can't like get 20 minutes in and go, holy shit, like I've completely fucked this up. Like, let's go back to the start.
Yeah.
You know, like that's tough on golf coaches, and it's even worse on the students because they get the receiving end of it. What Skillest does is, and one of our coaches said to me once, I've never given a bad online lesson, because what happens is that the student or the coach gets the information and you might sit on it because of the asynchronous nature of it. Obviously, we've got Zoom and we can do it in real time. But when it's asynchronous and someone sends swings to you, you can sit on it for 2, 3, 4 hours if you want. And you might have 5 online lessons and you might go through all of them before you reply to any of them. And you can say, okay, how's this guy thinking about this? Or how is this guy, what does he really need to know here for me to help him? Like, what doesn't he need to know? What does he need to know? What's the best strategy here? And then you can go in with a really, really clear mind and generally set things off in the right direction. Whereas, you know, like golf coaching can be, I'm lucky now that I've murdered enough people over 20 years that I can fix people pretty good, you know, like, but that 20 years when I'm learning how to teach, right, there are so many train wrecks along the way, because like you've seen something wrong and you've articulated the wrong, or you've tried to fix something the wrong way and you can't go back. And obviously, you know, the online thing completely solves that for a coach, where they can keep it really, really clear and concise.
You know, I think it really to add on that, it really helps the player too, because the player is probably receiving the information when they're at home. They get to watch it a few times, digest the information, maybe ask a question or two before going to the range. And then they don't have us hounding over them, feeling the pressure and the anxiety involved with trying to perform it.
Henry, like, it's a horrible learning environment. Like, if you think, I just had a girl come in here before. I literally gave a golf lesson just before we started chatting. Really nice girl. She was nervous as hell. Like, she was like really, really paranoid about the experience and like, I'm going to miss this ball. This is bad. And then I stand over her and look, hopefully I can try and make it relatively comfortable. But like, I'm sort of barking instructions at her for an hour and she's trying to execute it. It's like, oh, this is horrible. And I remember Keith saying something which really stuck with me. Keith, when we did I think we did a player swing review, you said like what Skillest offers is just so much more self-discovery. So like students aren't standing there like being forced to execute straight away. And if they don't hit a good shot, they're bad students and like feeling terrible about themselves. They can take the information away. And not only can they sort of work in their own time and have that sense of self-discovery, but they're not forced to do it in this really, really sort of abrupt manner. And I think that, you can, if you're a great, skills coach, you can give them a whole bunch of things to work on to help them with that process of self-discovery, learn in their own time. And I think that, it's just better for the student in that it's all bite size. Like they can take what they want from the lesson as well. They're like, okay, I think I can apply that and I can work at that for a little bit. And then I'm ready to move on to the next one. And I think that, often as golf coaches, we've all got egos, like despite, how we try and get rid of it as much as possible. Everyone wants a student hitting it better within an hour. Like you cannot tell me there's a coach out there that's not trying to get them to hit it better straight away. But consequently, are we forcing too much on them? Are we trying to change too much at once? Are we trying to, flood them with too much information, show them how intelligent we are and that we know everything and we know how to fix them? Maybe that isn't a great way to learn. Maybe it should be, okay, here's what's right for you, consume it in your own time, sense of self-discovery, come back to me with any questions you have, and let's do this in a really, really thoughtful process.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think one of the best things about the app is that they can watch the lesson multiple times.
Yeah.
Because we know, it's proven that when you leave a lesson environment, you're going to forget like 20% within the first 15 minutes and then like another 50% a day after that.
Exactly.
And so when you don't see that person for another month, they're coming back and you're delivering the exact same lesson that you just gave them. And you feel like you're spinning your tires. I'm sure they feel like what they're probably feeling like is like they're letting you down almost.
Yep.
And like you described, it's this weird environment sometimes where I can almost see their wheels spinning in their head, like they've missed a few bad shots. So like the embarrassment setting in because they want to almost like impress me as the coach. And is that the right mindset and the right environment for learning? Most of the time, probably not. And so the comfort of going to your own driving range, having digested the message that I've sent them for maybe 2-3 days before they get to the range on Saturday, and then they can just go at it at their own pace. They could spend 2 hours there, 3 hours there if they want, and then just work on it and then send me an update, and then I can make a little tweak. I've had some students locally who come to see me once a month or twice or once every other month, and then they're on my unlimited monthly subscription.
Right.
And so they're sending me little tidbits from the range, and then they come in for a tune-in every other month, and those are the students I've actually seen make the biggest improvements.
And that's like, I think we sort of need to look at it exactly like that, Keith, in that we need to flip it a little bit and realize the hard bit is when they're not in front of us. That's like I say to every single one of my students now, the little, prologue or the little spiel that I give every student when I see them for the first time has evolved over the years. But it's now just turned into, okay, what's about to happen over the next hour is probably the really easy bit, right? This is going to be, you're going to hit it better than you've ever hit it by the end of it. You're going to be like, oh my God, I never thought I could do that. That's great. But then I say, well, once you walk out those glass doors, right, it's like everything just washes off the person that you've just done. It's just, as you said, I think the data is like within 48 hours, you've lost 80% of it in terms of retention. And if nothing is happening in between time, it's pretty much like you might get someone good over an 8-year period or something like that. But the chances of actually like really developing their skills really fast is almost impossible. So I think we just need to look at it that, and in effect, this is Skillest is all about the when you're not in front of them sort of thing, you know what I mean, which we find really exciting. It's like the thing that the easy bit is the diagnosis stuff, right? Okay, we know what's wrong. Do these drills, stand in front of a mirror, chip away at it. Here's an impact bag. Here's a alignment stick. Do this stuff. But we need to focus so much more on the stuff that when they're not standing in front of us. That's unequivocally the hardest part of it. And I would say traditionally, we have paid no attention to that whatsoever. It's all been, okay, when are you coming back for another hour lesson? It's so transactional. It's only in big chunks in person. And yeah, if we can do go a long way to changing that, then, you know, my life mission will have been achieved, I suppose.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was talking to Henry about this earlier about like debating of making my entire program like in order to take lessons with you have to do it that way. You have you know, you'll come see me once a month, and in the meantime you'll check in with me weekly or bi-weekly, and because there's nothing more not frustrating for a coach, but like disheartening for that student for me as a coach, when they come back and they were working on something that was different from what I said, and they've just spent the last 4 weeks making that permanent.
Yeah.
And then we're undoing that entire thing. And it wasn't their fault necessarily, but maybe they just misinterpreted something. And then we're back to square one. And it pains me as a coach because you could have saved them that headache.
100%. And money. Like, this is the thing.
And money, right.
They can also think that, you know, oh, what I'll do is I'll pay for my 1 hour lesson. No doubt you're incredibly expensive these days, Keith, as well, right? So, you know, you pay for your 1 hour lesson, and then they think, oh, I'll save my money and I'll go back in 4 weeks and I'll pay for another hour lesson. And in their mind, they think that that's cost effective. And it's actually the worst thing you possibly do, because you've effectively thrown $400 down the toilet because you haven't integrated anything. Whereas if you pay for a 1 hour in person or something, and then you do these, you know, you pay for your subscription, and then you pay for, like, your learning is going to condense down to the point where you might only need, you know, sort of 8 weeks of hardcore work before you've integrated something. Whereas you can sort of space that all out, thinking that you're being cost effective, and you never actually progress and get anywhere, sort of thing. So, but I think that, yeah, getting back to what you were saying, Keith, that you are now making this a, you know, like an absolute, when people are actually learning from you in person, I hope, you know, what we think that, like, in the future, unless you do that, you'll probably be seen as negligent, like, as a golf coach. Like, you would have to think that at some stage, and to be perfectly honest, like, if driving ranges are going to stay relevant, you know, like, or academies are going to stay relevant, this is going to sound crazy, but I was listening to Mark Zuckerberg on The Information, this podcast the other day, like, the stuff that they're coming out with in terms of, like, augmented reality and virtual reality headsets and stuff. Like, we're talking like within the next decade, you're going to be able to, Keith, feel like you're sitting in a room with someone else with your headset on, and you'll be able to see the way their body works, and you'll literally be able to teach completely remotely. And we're also seeing, you know, you've seen guys like, there's a guy, Pete Lockett, over in London, who's building his own, like, in simulator in his backyard. We've got a guy in Sydney who's doing the same thing. Like, for academies to stay really relevant, I think they better start offering this stuff, because coaches can start building their own stuff at home, or, you know, augmented reality and virtual reality. Coaches are going to become more and more independent and be able to run their own thing from their home, sort of thing. So I think that this will become a necessity in the near future. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, you just need a net and a backyard, right? And some good
100%.
lighting, and you can run an entire business from the comfort of your home. But also, again, it's in that optimal learning environment for the student and the coach.
100%. 100%.
Where do you see, like, you mentioned augmented reality there just a minute ago, but, you know, and you might be a little biased.
No,
where do you see the world of coaching going in the next 10 years?
I think it's, like, super exciting, right? Because think about, okay, so if we look at some percentages of people that have ever had a golf lesson, right? So how many people do you speak to that are like, oh, I don't want to go and see a pro. He'll ruin my golf swing. Or he had that person, she or he had a really bad experience. They're never going to go back to a golf pro because they learned from maybe a coach that doesn't care as much as they should. And consequently, only 8% of people that play the game of golf have had a golf lesson. 8%, right? Like that for me just is crazy. That should be 30% at least, right? So imagine an environment, and you've got Peloton sitting behind you, right, Keith, and we love Peloton. And what Peloton did, and what people could never have imagined, right, is that if you remove all friction, right, and you create this at-home experience that is like so good that the market is 1,000 times bigger than you could have ever imagined, right? So if you think about Peloton, that people would say, oh, their market size is people who have ever had a spin class or gone for a spin class. That's totally the wrong way to think about it, because there are millions of people out there that hate the idea of sitting next to a stinky person in a spin class, going to a stinky gym and like having a shower with other people. They haven't got time to get in that car and drive down there. They haven't got one nearby. So the market was actually everyone who was sitting at home who ever wanted to get fit and healthy, but hasn't had a really seamless experience to do that, right? Which is $1 billion. Now, I think Peloton are worth $10 billion, right? It's a $10 billion company. And they're effectively just at-home spin classes. It's a beautiful experience, don't get me wrong. Think about golf coaching, right? What if we can create this experience at home that is so beautiful, right, that is so seamless, that we can get 30% of all people getting golf lessons? Like, what if we can expand it from, I think last year the golf industry, the coaching industry was a bit over $1 billion or something in the US and 2.5 globally. That should be $5 billion. Like, you should be able to double the amount of people that are getting golf lessons. So I'm really, really excited about, spoke to you earlier, we're doing some great things at the moment. We're, raising another round of capital, and we're going to throw so many resources at making this technology so seamless and so good and such a great experience that the market size isn't anyone who's ever had a golf lesson. It's anyone who ever wanted to get a golf lesson, but hated the idea of standing in front of a golf pro, that didn't know where to go, what coach to see, that didn't want to hit balls yet in front of a golf pro, or didn't have the money necessarily to go and spend, didn't see it as, or saw it as cost prohibitive. Like, what if we can just make the experience so amazing that literally double the people go and get golf lessons? So in terms of that, it's super exciting because we're going to grow the market. Like, there's absolutely no doubt about it. And it's exciting if you're a great golf coach and you're in demand, then you're just going to be flat out, as we say here in Australia, absolutely flat out busy, right? You're going to have so much work on your hands. And if we as a platform can then provide you with tools to scale that business, like if you're a great coach, you can, there's going to be so many more multi-millionaire coaches out there than there are today. Let's put it that way, we think. So that's really, really exciting. And then consequently, students are getting a better experience, getting better at the game. And, as things go forward, like, let's get really out there and talk about, okay, we've got augmented reality and we've got all that stuff happening, and, we would love to sort of implement that technology into Skillest in the future. But what's obviously happening over time is that things are becoming more and more automated, and we know that, students are going to have even more time. And so we've seen at the moment this huge revolution of at home. Everyone is working at home. Everyone's training at home. Everyone's doing at home. Everyone's got more time on their hands. So golf has gone crazy. Like, I don't know if you saw that Wall Street Journal article, but the boom that golf has seen in America is bigger than any tiger boom ever, right? And I think that is only going to increase as, people are going to work less as things become more automated. There might be like a universal basic income or something like that. And what will happen over time is that as people see, they find themselves, or they see their worth less in working, they will look to skills, and they will look to sporting activities and playing piano or whatever it might be to satisfy them, and to find that they can dedicate their lives to their skill and their art rather than their work and their jobs. So we think like golf will be huge. Like, golf is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as people have more time, more automation in the world, better technology to interact with coaches. And so, so that's a bit of a top line sort of view where we see it in the future, sort of thing.
What do you see as some of the better models for coaching? I know you talked a little bit about Keith's model and doing live lessons with check-ins periodically via Skillest. It seems like there'd be two different types of customers, one who you would never see in person and then one who you would see in person. Could you give us kind of a model for each as to how you think that would work most optimally?
Yeah, well, I think that, look, I think that it's an interesting one in that obviously when you see someone in person, like there's a lot more information that you can sort of, throw at people at once. Is that the best way to do it? We've had a chat about that. But I think that like what we need to do is create an environment where we move away from anything which is and look, this is going to take a fair bit of work because we are so indoctrinated into believing that you should have a 1 hour golf lesson or, a 2 hour golf or whatever. The reality is that we did this amazing promo or like incredible content and with a girl called Mia, right? So Mia Baker, and Mia is this amazing girl over in London who literally came into golf at the end of 2019. She'd never played before, right? So total beginner. She's a highly intelligent girl. She's like a product manager at a great tech company. But anyway, I saw Mia on Instagram and she had about 2,000 followers at this stage, but I saw her doing this drill with a golf club and I thought, that girl gets it, right? She was standing in front of a mirror and she just uploaded footage of herself doing a drill. I was like, that girl gets it. We're going to train her completely remotely on Skillest, right? So I got into contact with her. I got Steve Giuliano, one of our other coaches, and I said, okay, Steve, I want you to train Mia during COVID in her backyard. She'd only been on the golf course once in her life. And granted, Mia's special because she's very smart and she gets what it takes to get good at anything and she's obsessed with process. But the thing, she sort of coined the phrase little and often, rather. So little and often, which is you need to be learning little bites often from your coach, not huge chunks very, very occasionally. And I think that that's the model and what we need to create, whether it is, an in-person or an online environment. We need to get more towards someone. So Keith just said before, someone comes along for a golf lesson, they disappear for 4 weeks, they work on the wrong thing the whole time, they come back and they've, totally misinterpreted everything and it's all wrong. What would have mitigated that? The thing that would have fixed that would literally be a 2-second check-in with Keith the next day. It's not a 1 hour block. It's just like, is this right? So they can upload a piece of footage of them standing in front of the mirror with the setup, with their posture the right way that Keith was working on them the day before. That's all it would have taken. Like, they don't need to book in for another hour golf lesson to make sure that they're working on something the right way. And we just, as coaches, as an industry, need to push so much more into that, like tiny little bite-sized things. Like if I interact with 20 students in a day instead of 8, that's probably better. But we also need to create this expectation that, okay, you've only got 4 or 5 minutes of my time, and just to know, and obviously every situation is slightly different, but we need to create this little and often learning environment as much as possible. And look, we've probably done, there's a little bit of stuff with the technology we need to change and we're going to change to make it feel like when you learn from Keith or yourself, Henry, it's more of like an open line of communication, and it's just, you can just check in and go, hey, here's one swing, or here's like a message, or here's like a photo I took, or just something really simple, because that's what we want to create, is like this open line of communication with small amounts of information all the time rather than big chunks. So that's what's going to get people better.
Yeah,
no doubt.
No doubt, man.
Yeah, that really is cool. A little bit off, and it really aligns with the science of distributed practice, where instead of we practice in big long chunks, we end up distributing it over a period of time, a period of days. It goes a long way. Now, how little and how often? So if I sign up for a lesson with you, how often would you want me checking in, and how short are those bits of information?
Yeah, it's, it's easy to sort of say everyone should do little and often when every situation is sort of, so different from each other. But like what I love to see is that if I get an online lesson from someone and I send it back, I want to see something the next day. And I want to see something the next day generally in a drill, like without hitting a golf ball. I want to see that they can execute something without the ball even being there in the first place, because you can be guaranteed if you put the ball down that they've got no chance of, if they can't do it in a drill standing in front of a mirror, then they've probably got no chance of doing it with the golf ball there. So if there's an online lesson, I always want to see someone see something at least the next day or within 48 hours of that, because then I know they're off and away and they can sort of work at that the same way. And then what I always try and do is, I mean, I've been using, I don't know about you, Keith and Henry, but I've been using the Zoom feature heaps. Like I really enjoy exactly how we're doing. I like to at least once or twice a month with a student, because everyone's got their own at-home facility as well now. Like it's just crazy. Like every swing I get now sent to me is literally with a Skytrax or a Mevo Plus, or with a net in their backyard sort of thing. And I love doing the student puts their AirPods in, they're literally hitting balls in front of me as I'm watching on. I mean, the Skillest platform, it's such a beautiful thing when I actually screen record them hitting, and then I can put it into the analysis tool and they can watch me give them an online lesson in real time. So I generally love and it is different with everyone, it's the combination of the synchronous and the asynchronous. So the asynchronous is when someone just sends video through, synchronous is the Zoom, and the asynchronous are going to be more of the bite-sized pieces. Am I working on things the right way? How does this look? And then the Zoom thing is like, okay, let's put half an hour aside to like just really break this down. And then it is a little bit hard. Like we'd love to in the app, like build in structures and like, okay, this is what you should do on this day and this and this and this day. Trying to build something like that when every coach coaches completely differently and every student learns differently is difficult. But I think going forward, we'd love to do something like that. But I just think that the problem with the past is obviously when it's transactional, students feel scared to ask their coach if they're working on things the right way. They don't want to message them. They don't want to do anything like that. And that's the great thing about the subscription thing, is that it's an open line of communication. I just want my students never ever to feel like, should I ask him something, or should I send something through? Feel free to do it anytime, but just know that like you might just get something really simple back. Like Andreas Carley, one of our other coaches, reckons he sends just message replies all the time. Yep, that's great. Like he doesn't even do an analysis of the swing. He'll just like hold his finger down on the microphone and do a record. Go, yep, that's great. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll do a little bit more of this. And I think that's completely fine as well, as long as the student is getting what they need out of it.
Yeah, I think it's still so new in the reality of the situation, like online lessons, virtual learning, like we're still just kind of getting into this whole wild frontier of new golf instruction. So for me, like when I first started, to be honest, I was like, what do I do here? How does this person going to learn from me virtually? And it's actually made me a better communicator. It's made me a better coach. It's made me say the right thing at the right time the first time. And it's actually made my message simpler for my in-person lessons.
Great.
And, what I think what we need to do going forward is just those little bite-sized pieces of information. I mean, now that I've been access to it, I don't know like how you would really go about coaching any other way. So it's really crazy, man, but you've done a fantastic job on the app, and I'm just happy to be a part of the revolution. I know Henry is too. I know I had to convince Henry a little bit to get in on the Skillest action, but he's stoked he's been a part of it.
You had to convince me to get on Instagram, brother. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's there's always going to be resistance. There's always going to be resistance from everyone. Like we still get it. Like, and the great thing about that resistance is that it means there's a huge opportunity for the early adopters. You know what I mean? So if you get in now, as you said, Keith, like this is. Try and wrap your head around, like, this is literally the tip of the iceberg. Like, it is not even the tip of the iceberg of what will be happening in the future in terms of people learning from home, from the best coaches in the world, whoever they want to learn from. This will be the majority. I know this is a massive call, right? But this will be the majority of the way people learn. At the moment, we make up, 0.001% of all students on the planet, but there's no doubt that in the future, as technology evolves, people will not, especially like Gen Z or whatever they are. I don't know what they are these days. Sort of the young whippersnappers. Probably you two are both Gen Zers or something. How old are you, Kate? I don't even know.
I just turned 30.
Oh my God. What about you, Henry?
I'm 34.
Right. Okay. So you're closer to my vintage. Okay. But these people, the younger kids, are going to like, it won't even occur to them. They're going to be like, you mean I've got to drive to go and see that person? Like, it won't even enter their mind that it should be an option, sort of thing. So, and we're seeing that already in platforms, is that, you know, they don't even like getting on, no one likes getting on a phone call anymore. They just, everything's text, everything's message sort of thing. So trying to create, there's just no doubt that in the future that this is just the tip and, you know, yeah, big things ahead.
That's awesome, man. Well, Baden, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for jumping on the call. Just happy to be a part of the revolution, man. I remember that call we had very vividly, like 5 years ago, when you first jumped on the call. You were like, "Hey, man, give me a shout. I want to, you know, lay it all out for you." Which, you know, I could feel your excitement for the app in that call. And yeah, I mean, I had just a small following of people on Instagram now, and, you know, 5 years later, I'm at where I'm at, and, you know, have a full stable of online lesson subscribers, and the app keeps getting better, and I'm just looking forward to seeing where things go and how it helps me evolve as a coach. But also, I think what's at the forefront of all this is the golfer. Yeah. We got to find a way to make the golfers better. You know, what we've been doing so far up until this point, the handicaps haven't changed globally. You know, something's got to change. And I think this is the catalyst right here.
Totally agree, Keith. And, you know, and for both of you, just lucky to have, you know, great young coaches like you guys involved in the platform. And, you know, we're just so lucky that we've got amazing communicators and compelling, you know, messages like the messages that you guys tell, because yeah, you guys are raising all boats as well. Like, you're bringing Skillest up. As you guys grow, Skillest grows as well. So we're lucky to have guys like you.
And where can people find more about Skillest? You know, where can they get more information? I know you have an Instagram page, but, you know, you're also doing cool stuff on Clubhouse and, you know, interviews and stuff like that. So, you know, what's going on in the world of Skillest where people can kind of get involved?
Yeah, exactly. So look, skillest.com, obviously, then download in the Android or the App Store. And then, yeah, like tomorrow morning, we've got Sean Foley on Clubhouse, which will be really, really exciting. So I don't know when this is coming out, but everyone will probably, I don't think it'll be coming out in the next 12 hours. So you'll have missed Sean Foley. But yeah, look, you can catch us everywhere, sort of thing. And, you know, just DM us in, if you're a coach out there or a student that wants to get involved in the platform, you can DM us like in our social, or you can get me at Baden at skillest.com, and that's BADEN. There's no Y, there's no I or anything like that.
Beatty with a Y. Well,
Baden,
man,
that was awesome, man.
Yeah, let's get back to your busy life there.
All right, boys, thanks so much, and we'll keep it real, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, man, we'll be in touch.
Cool.